When I was growing up, adventure games ruled the roost. They were the cream of the crop when it came to computer games. Sure, you had some action games and a lot of RPGs, but the adventure game market is a tale of an amazing rise and fall, spearheaded on both ends, mostly by an awesome company called Sierra Online. I'm sure you all know the stories about Sierra. Ken and Roberta Williams made Mystery House. They sold the game on floppy disks and Ziploc bags. The company grew and expanded until they sold it to a corrupt French company that went bust. Sierra gets sold to Vivendi, gets gutted, and the trademark and properties are sold to Activision, and it continues to exist as a publishing husk of the great company it once was. I loved their games back in the day, from Space Quest to Manhunter. Sierra had a library of games that was second to none. Well, okay, they did have some pretty stiff competition from LucasArts, who also made some awesome adventure games. The problem with these games is that they had absolutely no replay value. Once you beat the game, you could beat it over and over again without any effort. They were, after all, point, click, and win games. So a lot of these games had to rely on being batshit insane difficult. We're talking puzzles that would not make sense even to the most insane of minds. Put gem in mouth? Use rat to get wallet? What the fuck? Of course, that's the reason I don't do adventure games on Until We Win. They're just one-shot games that can be beaten with little effort once you know what to do. And that's not a lot of fun. So instead of beating an adventure game for you, let's check out some of the most difficult adventure games that I played as a kid. Honorable mention number 1, Lorbo 2, The Dagger of Amon-Ra. It's not in the top 10 because it's actually not that hard of an adventure game, but it gets an honorable mention because it pulls the ultimate dick move of all dick moves in adventure games. If you weren't paying attention to the story and you weren't taking notes the entire time, then the game screws you. No, it doesn't have an ultra-hard puzzle you need to solve, or even the rare but often abused timed puzzle. No, you get to take a pop quiz at the end. If you didn't keep track of every minute detail of the story, this game will screw you sideways. Honorable mention number 2, Sam & Max Hit the Road. This game was hilarious, and I loved it as a kid, but let me ask you this. If you want to get a piece of twine, what would you do? A, you'd go to a hobby store and buy some. B, go through your junk drawer and hope to come across some. Or C, stick your psychotic rabbit friend inside the world's largest ball of twine and have him steal a piece. If you said anything but C, you're not ready for the insane logic that only a man with a brain made of pureed cow dung could come up with. And that's Sam & Max Hit the Road in a nutshell. It's one insane ride from beginning to end that grinds to a halt because you'll take forever to figure out that a Bigfoot scratching his toe actually needs a rasp to get at his itch. Number 10, Space Quest 4. Space Quest is fondly remembered as being one of the funniest adventure games to come out of the 90s. It's also one of the more difficult ones. Pitfalls abound in this game, from taking an inventory item you shouldn't have to getting eaten by slime and then some. From the latex babes of Estros to Space Quest 12, Space Quest 4 is chock full of self-referencing jokes, political satire, pop culture references, dick jokes, and of course, puzzles. This game is infamous for having some nasty puzzles. It also pulls one of the meanest tricks any adventure game can pull, the inventory item that kills. If you pick up the unstable ordnance and you jump down the sewer, the next part of the game you're supposed to go to, you die. It's a mean trick to include in a game where you're expected to try and pick up everything. Then there's also the puzzle this game is infamous for, Skatorama. I can't begin to tell you the endless hours I played through this one section of the game trying desperately to figure out how in the hell you're supposed to avoid the sequel police. Ultimately, it's a simple maze which you have to get through, but if you don't know the path, prepare to die. A lot. The problem with this maze is that there aren't any walls, so you can go in any direction, say for straight through the ground, but if you choose the wrong direction, or if you lead the sequel police in the wrong direction, you'll be cornered and die. Fuck the Skaterama. Number 9. Discworld. A great series of books written by a man whose brain has slowly degenerated into mush, Discworld was a fantastic but frustrating adventure following the life of Rincewind, a loser of a wizard who, if he was capable of doing anything with his powers, would have flown through this game in a few minutes. As Rincewind of Unseen University, you're tasked with the removal of a dragon that has appeared recently. The dragon has, obviously, attached itself to a building. However, your first objective is to create a dragon detector, and things only get worse from there. Unfortunately, Rincewind's pretty much a moron when it comes to magic, so the player is forced to go through some of the most obscure and head-scratching puzzles in the world. If you get stuck, the only advice the game manual gives you is to talk to everyone at least twice, and use every item with everything in the game. Thanks a lot for that. Some of the puzzles in this game are so obscure and the hints so subtle that a solution to one of the puzzles is to put a keg in the fireplace. Good luck with that. Number 8. Codename Iceman. Imagine a game that takes place at around 2004, during a global oil shortage where Tunisia is suddenly discovered to possess a surplus of high-grade oil. As you can imagine, the Soviet and American governments are eager to acquire said oil, which leads to a lot of interesting plot developments. International politics, a world on the brink of war, secret agents, black ops, and an officer with a gun. Getting all 300 out of 300 points in Codename Iceman is not easy, and the main reason for that is the game's designer, Jim Walls, is a stickler for procedure. While he was famous for his work on Police Quest, the procedure you're required to follow in Codename Iceman is almost crazy. If you don't own a copy of the game manual, you're pretty much boned because the entire game revolves around the procedures outlined in that manual. And that's what makes this game so damn difficult. If you slip up once, like forgetting to check the ID you were handed back, you'll get bit in the ass later in the game and forced to restart. I'm not kidding, and this happens a good 6 or 7 hours after you're given the ID. Number 7. Gold Rush. Jared Wilson received a letter in the mail saying he must come to Sacramento as soon as possible to meet his long-lost brother. Aside from having a pretty cool story, this was also one of the earliest adventure games to have multiple paths, although each of the 3 paths eventually converges into the final game plot. What makes this game difficult? Well, let me count the ways. From the beginning of the game, you're on a timer. You've only got a few minutes before gold is discovered, and this drastically alters the local economy. Your house becomes worthless, the price of goods and tickets skyrockets, and it becomes almost impossible to get anywhere. Once you manage to get a ticket to California, you'll face your own share of problems on the route you've chosen to take, including unruly oxen, Native Americans, and crossing the desert by stagecoach, surviving treacherous swamps and jungles in Panama, or surviving scurvy, starvation, and storms by taking the Cape Horn route. Once you've actually managed to survive the trip to Sacramento, you'll be led on a very long and dangerous quest of panhandling and mystery to find your long-lost brother. Oh, and you know the term save early, save often? Well, you'd better save whenever you can, because you can die at random points in this game from disease. That's right, you can die at random points in the game for no reason. All of this makes Gold Rush one of the most difficult, but very fulfilling adventure games to get through. Number 6, The Adventures of Willy Beamish. Sure, Willy Beamish was lampooned on the Sega CD for being a poor quality game, but the PC version was vastly superior, mostly because it didn't have any voice actors to hamper the experience. In it, you play as Willy Beamish, your mid-90s school kid stereotype. He even has a pet frog named Horny. The game itself is simple. Get yourself to California so you can go to the Nintendo Championships. Well, they don't say Nintendo, but the connection is pretty apparent. Bad movie connections aside, Willy Beamish was a great game to play as a kid and hard as hell. It's your typical adventure game, rub items on other items to unlock events. However, you could unlock certain events out of order, or do things you weren't supposed to do that would either leave you in an unwinnable state, something pretty uncommon for Sierra at the time, or you would do something so terrible that you'd land in military school. I'm not kidding here. Unlike other adventure games where if you screw up, you either die or get to try again, if you screw up in this game, you don't necessarily die. The game continues on as normal, but once you screw up enough times, your parents get so fed up with you that they ship your ass off to military boot camp. And that's what makes this game so difficult. You could do everything right up until the final puzzle, but if you screwed up just once earlier in the game, you lose, and you're forced to play through the entire game from the beginning to get the proper ending. This game left you very little wiggle room and beat your ass for being too fat to fit into its jeans. Number 5, Manhunter, New York. Set in the futuristic year of 2004, when Earth was enslaved by a race of aliens known as the Orbs, who forced man to wear nondescript robes and be implanted with GPS tracking devices. You play as nondescript character number 348, who is designated Manhunter. Your job is to track down fellow humans who are believed to be forming an underground resistance. Eventually, you come to find out that the Orbs are not the benevolent rulers that you thought they were, as if the complete and total destruction of New York City wasn't enough evidence, and you join the resistance. What made this game difficult was that it was, and is, unlike any other adventure game released. Instead of being a narrative-driven game, the player is expected to keep track of everything that's happening. The protagonist of the game is, in essence, you. This makes things pretty tricky, because if your note-taking isn't up to par, and your memory is a little hazy, you can get lost in the world of Manhunter with no place to go. Number 4, Maniac Mansion. And whoa, you're gonna go with Maniac Mansion on this one? I could think of 100 other games that were harder than this. Now, to be fair, looking back on adventure games, Maniac Mansion isn't the most difficult game in the world. However, it does have one thing that made it much more difficult than any other adventure game at the time. You can start the game off in an unwinnable state. Yep, 9 times out of 10, you'll have the wrong combination of characters to make it through the game. Eventually, you'll reach a point where your 3 chosen characters provide an impossible combination to get through the various puzzles of Maniac Mansion. You'll be stuck in an unwinnable state and forced to start from the beginning. How's that for a kick in the nuts? Number 3, King's Quest AGI. King's Quest 1 is a fun hide-and-seek game, and there are some cool puzzles and story elements in it, but there's one puzzle in this game that drove people up a wall: the Rumpelstiltskin puzzle. Everyone knows that you just simply need to say Rumpelstiltskin's name to make him go away, but that's not entirely true in King's Quest 1. In an early example of Roberta Williams' batshit insane moon logic, instead of having you spell Rumpelstiltskin, she decided to tell you to think backwards. But instead of having you spell Rumpelstiltskin backwards, she had you spell his name in a backwards alphabet. So instead of spelling Rumpelstiltskin, Nick Stilton, you'd have to spell it Ifkvgorhipperm. And that's only the start of Williams' moon logic career. Number 2, King's Quest 3. I know a lot of King's Quest fans will dispute me on this one, but the opening to King's Quest 3 is quite possibly one of the hardest opening puzzles in adventure gaming history. If you do any step out of order, or you're not fast enough, you die. That's right, the evil wizard Mananan is a complete douche. Not only do you have to do all of your cleaning duties in an expected order and in time, you're also dead at the end of the day because you're about to turn 18 and the evil wizard is apparently a pedophile. So what do you have to do? You've got to manage a way to get out of Nanu's shack while doing your cleaning duties. And let me tell you that when I first played this game, I thought I might have to throw lightning bolts at him, kill him in his sleep, or do any number of things. I did not expect that I'd have to turn this asshole into a cat. Number 1. Gabriel Knight 3. At around the time when Myst was resurrecting the adventure game genre by making it more heavily puzzle-based, a lady by the name of Jane Jensen came along and not only killed, but brutally beat and then raped the corpse of adventure gaming. The first puzzle of this game, the first major puzzle of this game, requires you to fool a moped rental clerk. Easy enough, right? Oh my, you are mistaken. This puzzle involves stealing a passport, using a marker to draw a mustache on the passport photo, getting a tuft of black cat hair by using masking tape on a fence, and using syrup to paste the cat hair on your face. And the guy you're impersonating, he doesn't even have a fucking mustache. You have to impersonate a man with no mustache by wearing a mustache that you obtain by causing a cat to run through a hole in the fence, which rubs up against masking tape, a tape carpenters use on drywall so it doesn't get damaged, causing a large tuft of black fur to get torn from the cat's back. You then stick this hair on your face with maple fucking syrup. What the fuck, Miss Jensen? What the fuck? And that's adventure gaming in a nutshell, folks. Really, that's how I spent my childhood. So when people ask me why I'm so insane, now you know. I had to tear hair off the back of a cat with masking tape and stick it to my face with maple syrup, while impersonating a guy who doesn't have a mustache.